Hi, everybody. Michael here from Night Noon Games, and today I'm going to play a little bit of Flick Silverpin's Guide to Dragontown using Shadowdark and the SoloDark solo rule set. Flick Silverpin's Guide to Dragontown and the Darkness Below is an awesome system-neutral adventure by the great JP Coovert. This book, and this is just a preview copy, is currently live on Kickstarter. Now, there's so much great stuff in this book. It's a compilation of the zines that he does on his Patreon. And it's really easy to play anything in this book in any fantasy RPG system that you use. The really cool thing about this Kickstarter project is if it reaches $100,000, which I think it has a great chance of doing, that means yours truly is going to be writing a conversion of this whole book to be used specifically for Shadowdark. And I've already converted one of the chapters to use as a free preview for people. And of course, that is available on the Kickstarter page. There's a link to that down in the description below. So this is the chapter that we're going to play through solo here using Shadowdark and the SoloDark rules. This specific chapter is called The City of Eternal Night. All the things I have is I have 3 character sheets. I just whip these characters up quickly on Shadowdark links. They're 3rd level characters. I've got my Shadowdark core rules. I've got my SoloDark pamphlet, and this is actually the first time that I've actually played SoloDark. And I've got some dice, my dice tray. And over here where you can't see, there's also a GM screen in case something comes up. And then I also have my watch, which you can see has LCARs on it. I'm going to be using that for the torch timers. In SoloDark, there's a mechanic where you can count down dice to determine when a torch goes out. But frankly, when I play solo, I like using a real world timer still because then it surprises me when it happens. And I feel like if I was using a countdown, then I'd be like, oh, it's at 2. Oh, it's at 1. Like I know my torch is about to go out. We'll get to that in a moment. But first I wanted to talk about the characters. We have Shimrin, who is a human fighter. We got Ivy, who is a halfling knight of St. Idris. Then we have Layrim, who is an elf seer. I am a little concerned about this party since there are no healers, but I'm just going to dive into it and we'll see what happens. 1,300 years ago, the darkness below fell from the sky. It was weak and small, and for a century it sulked in the shadows beneath the Shadespear Mountains. But when the primordial creature sniffed out Netherhold, an advanced underground dwarven city, it regained its magical power by destroying the magnificent metropolis and consuming their mighty arcane forge. The darkness erupted back into the surface, leaving a giant pit in the Shadespear Mountains and covering the Malmure Valley in shadow. Now, 500 feet down, a cult wishing to cover the world in darkness has built a temple in the walls of the darkness below's destructive path. This chapter kind of has 3 parts to it. It has Netherhold, the City of Eternal Night, then it has Penumbra Temple. So I'm just going to do it in order and start with Netherhold. My characters are 3rd level, and I'm going to assume that they have been adventuring on their own and trying to discover what the darkness below is. And they're trying to uncover this mystery and help the city of Dragontown, whose mayor has gone missing. And of course, the mayor is a dragon. That's why it's called Dragontown. So when we look at Netherhold, the ruined halls of Netherhold, expansive halls have been taken over by crumbling earth and the passage of time. No one has inhabited this cryptic place for over 1,000 years, but in the damp, cold sections of Netherhold, glimpses of the ancient dwarven technology still remain. Narrow, empty troughs line the floors. Complex and indecipherable patterns and runes are carved into the walls, and mysterious obelisks float through the ruined halls. But one of the things that I did was I added more things to make it kind of Shadowdarkier. There's more tables for things like random encounters and things of that nature. So this was the first random encounter table that I came up with for this conversion. Because it is Shadowdark, I had to make the first item Stingbats. And nothing says Shadowdark like Stingbats and torches to me. All right, so we're going to say that our adventuring party is getting to the first area of Netherhold here. One of them is going to light a torch. And I think that Layrim, who is the seer, is going to be the best person probably to carry the torch here because Ivy has a crossbow that she will need 2 hands for. And then Shimrin uses a bastard sword and a shield. So Shimrin wouldn't be able to handle a sword, a shield, and a torch. So I think that honor goes to Layrim, our elf seer, who's going to be carrying the torch. And I'll start that torch timer. Now, a fun trick that I'm stealing from Mike Shea is when he's playing his Shadowdark game is he will roll a d12 and subtract that from an hour. So his players don't exactly know how long a torch is going to last. I want to play with a shorter torch timer since I'm playing solo and things tend to move faster. So I'm actually going to set mine for 30 minutes and then plus a d12. So it's going to be 37 minutes. My watch is off to the side. I won't be able to see it. And we can start play. So the three adventurers find themselves in a long hallway. It looks like this was previously a market. There are dilapidated stone stalls that line the walls. And the walls themselves, they're cracked. And even though this hasn't been lived in for 1,000 years, but probably a few thousand years older than that, stone is in surprisingly good shape. And I think that's probably because this was built by an advanced dwarven society. So they probably had some really great stone cutting and building techniques. The air in this hallway is heavy and it's sort of sour smelling. I know from the rules here that there's a Morlock hiding above, waiting to ambush anything that passes by. If you're new to solo role playing, you think you might have a hard time with that, keeping your sort of GM brain and your player brain separated. I don't think you have to stress that much about it because one, it's easier than you think it is. And two, if you don't do that great of a job, it doesn't really matter that much as long as you're having fun. I know personally there's a Morlock hiding above, and what I could do is use the Oracle in SoloDark to determine whether or not they spot them. But one of the core tenets of SoloDark, and I would say solo role playing in general, is to actually avoid using the Oracle. And you want to avoid using the Oracle because if your character has an ability that they can use, you want to lean in that direction. So I know that there's a Morlock hiding up at the top of this long hallway, and I'm going to use just whoever has the highest intelligence of my party. It's an 11. It's +0 for layroom. See if they can spot that Morlock. And I'm going to say the DC is 12. And I rolled a 6. So I know that they're going to be surprised. Now, a Morlock are these like cool looking creatures that JP invented. Expert climbers and navigators with gray skin and a propensity for smashing. So they're just like little dudes that are hulking and violent and kind of massive. They're also photophobic, so living underground has made their eyes sensitive to light. I think because of that, and because a sort of core tenet of Shadowdark is to attack the light, this Morlock is going to jump out of the shadows and try to knock the torch out of Layroom's hands. So first, I'm going to roll for initiative. Black is the party, the blue is the Morlock, and the Morlock definitely won that. So the Morlock leaps down and tries to attack Layroom to knock the torch out of her hand. Oh, here's an attack roll. It's going to be +6. And their AC is only 10, so that definitely hits. And I'm going to say that just totally knocks the torch out of Layroom's hand. So now the question is, does the torch go out? And I think I'm going to go to the Oracle table to determine that. So the way the SoloDark Oracle table works, you assign the check a probability. It's either unlikely or impossible. There's an even chance of it happening, or it's likely or certain. And then you roll the d20 to figure out if the answer is a yes, a no, or if there's a twist in there. Land on an odd number that isn't a 1, say yes or a no, but. And another thing about solo role playing in general is it's easier to use an oracle when you phrase things that are sort of in the affirmative or sort of leaning positive. So my initial thought was, should I ask, does the torch go out? I actually am going to change that to, does the torch stay lit? So does the torch stay lit? It's a 50-50 chance. It's a natural 20. Because on a natural 20, it's the most extreme version of that possible. I think not only does the torch stay lit, but it also lights some other stuff on fire there. There's a pile of organic material, a bunch of dry bushes that have grown up through the cracks and have died and then have died out over time. Since those are ripe for kindling, those go up in a blaze. And the three adventurers are suddenly confronted with this Morlock. And the Morlock, like I said, is light sensitive. So they're definitely going to put their hands up and try to shield their eyes from all of a sudden this intense flash of light. So this is actually going to be an advantage to the players. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but all of the players, all three PCs are going to start with a luck because that's just fun. This is going to happen. They see this Morlock is a baddie. And now that Layroom doesn't have their torch in one hand, they're actually able to double hand their stave. So Layer Armor's going to hit this Morlock in the head with their stave because the Morlock is just right in front of them. So a 3 plus 0, that's not going to hit. Shimmerin, the human fighter, has a bastard sword, of course, is going to go up to the Morlock with 2 hands. And because they're a fighter and they have some buffs from their random talents, and their strength's a plus 3, but this roll is actually a plus 6, and it's definitely hitting an 18 on the die. Going to be 1d8 plus 2, 5 damage. And this Morlock's pretty beefy. It's level 6, and it has 30 hit points. So that definitely makes a dent in it, but as it comes crashing down into its arm, maybe, it's holding up its arm to shield its eyes, it's able to slice its arm a little bit. Then we have the Ivy, the Halfling Knight of St. Yidris. Ivy is going to close in as well with her great sword. She hits 4-2. 17, the AC is only 10. And that's the thing about these little Morlocks. They got a decent amount of HP, but their AC isn't very high because they don't wear any armor. So that's a hit. 1d12 for another 9. So that's a big hit there. So this Morlock, after one round, is nearly halfway done with its HP, but doesn't like the light. And since it's about halfway, I'm actually going to roll a morale check for it. Of course, morale is a DC 15 wisdom check. The Morlock's wisdom's -2, and they fail that. So the Morlock is just going to scamper off back into the darkness because they've already been attacked pretty well. And now there's this blazing fire there that it's distracted by. Party is now out of combat, and they have fended off this first Morlock who ran off down the hall. Abram picks up the torch, and the party ventures onward. The party sees that there's 2 staircases, one on the near end of the hallway and one on the far end of the hallway. So this is another instance where sometimes when you're playing solo, it's hard to make decisions for your characters. And if you're ever not sure what they would do, then either just the Oracle or you can randomize it. So I'm just going to roll a D6. And if it's evens, they're gonna go down the first stairway into area 2. And if it's odds, they're going to go to the second stairway, which is area 3. So it's odds, and they're going to be heading down to area 3. Yes, I should also determine, where did the Morlock run to? Was it 2 or 3? Again, 5. So the Morlock went down to area 3 as well. That doesn't mean that they're still there, but that's sort of when they scampered down. So as they enter the room, Layroom holds out the torchlight. There are several of these obelisks that are laying around the room. They have runes carved into them. This is ancient technology that no one has seen for a long time, and they're not functioning. But as the group looks around, you do see that one of them is actually laying on top of a skeleton. So it's pretty clear here that this skeleton was crushed before it was a skeleton. It was probably just a person. That person died. And there's also pieces of obelisks just lying around too. So it looks like maybe this was a workshop or some kind of thing like that. And as the group approaches that skeleton that they see pinned down, you can tell that the bones are thicker and they're shorter. And this definitely looks like a dwarven skeleton to them. It's probably been here for centuries. And upon closer inspection too, they see a few runes that are carved into the obelisk that's crushing the skeleton. Looks like they've just etched in with a blade or stone or something like that. Now, the runes are in Dwarvish, and I don't think any of my players, none of them speak Dwarvish. So they see runes and they're going to go, that's interesting. I think they can put together that the skeleton carved this pretty easily, but they don't know what they say. I think this is a good time for a random encounter check. So this is the die that I like to use for random encounters because I got it at an estate sale and it's ivory. So it's definitely evil. So it seems like a great thing to use to roll random encounters. And it's a 1. So that means they might not be alone here. I've got my Netherhold random encounters table, and it's a D8 for 6. Ooh, 1d4 void spawn. Sends any magic or magic items to the party and are eager to chow down. D12s are my favorite die because they just roll so well. And I use D12s as the only die in my game, Blades and Heart. If you haven't heard about that, it's a hack of lasers and feelings that uses D12s. It's super fun. And my buddy Elliot gave me a full set of these 12-sided D4s, which are super fun to roll. I'm going to see how many void spawn there are. And there's 2. So this is a rough for the party here because void spawn are nothing to turn your head at. So void spawn are these cute little dudes that are essentially the darkness below incarnate. They have skeletal heads and they materialize on these twisted bodies of nothingness. Their eyes dart around, searching for any hint of arcane energy, because these guys actually like to eat magic. So I think what's going to happen here is the party is looking at the skeleton, they're investigating it, and they just hear these clicking noises and this creeping coming from behind them. Ivy hears something behind her and she turns around. And of course, there's just flickering torchlight dancing on the corners of this room, on the walls and on the ceiling. And at the corner in darkness, she sees two sets of eyes. And that's what I'm going to roll for initiative. And with SoloDark, it uses group initiative, which makes things a lot easier. So, the highest dex I decided was +1, and their dex is also +1. So the party won with 13. They're going to go first. The way I'm doing this is I'm just determining a turn orders that the players are going to go in for every combat round and then sticking to that throughout the combat round. Abby's going to go first since she's the one that saw the eyes. Dex pull out her crossbow and say, "Halt, who goes there?" As she's saying this, these two menacing creatures start crawling towards her over the rubble towards the party. She knows a monster when she sees one, so she's not going to take any chances and let these guys get any closer. At least she can say anything about it. So gonna use the crossbow to -2 for a 4, which is not going to hit. It just totally misses. Aram's turning around with the torch, and then finally both the void spawn are totally illuminated. They know danger when they see it. First thing they're going to do is cast a spell. They're going to cast Evoke Rage, which is a great buff. If it's successful, you call out the Berserk Rage locked inside someone. One willing humanoid you touch enters a Berserk state. The target is immune to morale checks, has advantage on strength checks and melee attacks, and deals plus 1d4 damage for the spell's duration. If the target does not attack another creature on its turn, the spell ends, and it lasts for 1d4 rounds. Because Layrim is an elf, they get +1 to spell casting rolls, and the wisdom is already +4. So this is a +5 to make this Evoke Rage check. And it fails. I have a few dimes here that I'm going to have represent the luck tokens of players. I'm going to definitely spend a luck token to try to reroll that Evoke Rage. The 24, that definitely hits. And they are casting that on Shimmerin because Shimmerin got the big ass sword. And it's definitely the character best meant for melee. So Layrim is keeping their distance, close their eyes, touches Shimmerin, and casts Evoke Rage. It's going to last for D4 rounds. It's only one round, but that's better than nothing. Then Shimmerin is going to see these creatures, and I would say they're within near, and run up to one of them and try to give it a walloping. Of course, since I just cast Evoke Rage, they have advantage on strength checks. So 13 +3, 16, and their AC is only 13, so that's successful. They say D8 +2, 3, so 3 damage. Now it's the Void Spawn's turn. Void Spawn, like I mentioned, have the ability to eat magic. If the players have a magic item, or if a spell is directed at them, they can try to devour it. Luckily, or maybe unluckily, none of these players actually have any magic items on them. And that spell that a seer cast wasn't directed at them. So they aren't able to eat magic this turn. What they are able to do is something called Gather Shadows. DC 12, summon darkness in the space within near, snuffing out torches. So they can actually control shadows enough to envelop the light and snuff it out. And I think the first one is going to make an attempt at that. They're going to have their wisdom, which is +2 and 15. So that's successful. And I can stop that torch timer because that torch is suddenly out. Monsters can see in the dark, even if players can't. So I think Ivy's first reaction is to use her one spell, which is Eye Bite. And what Eye Bite does is one creature you target takes 1d4 damage and it can't see until its next turn. It has to be within near. Shadowdark leaves a lot of open space for interpretation. So I'm going to say that the opponent doesn't necessarily have to be seen, since Ivy does know that there are opponents are enemies within near, she's going to try to cast this on one of them. And I'm going to just cast it at disadvantage because she can't see them. So it's DC 11 to cast and disadvantage. And it doesn't matter. She adds her charisma to 15, so it's 17. That easily is able to handle that. And I'm going to roll a odds or evens to determine whether it hit Void Spawn 1, which already has damage, or Void Spawn 2, odds evens. And it hits Void Spawn 1, who can't see for 3 rounds. They cannot see Ivy. And that is Ivy's turn. Layram, the seer, is standing back and has the torch in her hand that is currently not lit. She's going to try to light this torch because they really could use some sight. And before she does that, she's going to use her Omen ability, the special seer ability. If you haven't seen my video on seers, check it out. I'll put a link up at the top or whatever. Seers can give themselves a luck token. Since this is an ability, it doesn't count as their action on their turn. It's a DC 9 wisdom check, and the wisdom is +4. Able to succeed, Layram gets the luck token back, and then I'm going to try to light a torch. I think that the DC for this is in the dark, 12. Boom, 12, got it. Layram is able to get out her flint and steel and light a torch. When I turned off that timer before, there's only like 9 minutes left, so I'm just going to roll a D12 to see how much longer this torch will last. It's only going to last 5 minutes. Of course, I don't think the player characters know that. They light it up, and it is kind of a weak flame. So they kind of would know, like, oh, this probably isn't long for this world. And that's Layram's turn. And then we have Shimrin, who is up close with both of the Void Spawn, ready to get back in action. They only have the Evoke Rage for 1 turn, so that's no longer applicable. Shimrin is going to attack the 1 Void Spawn he already attacked. An 11 +6. That's going to easily beat the AC 13. 4 damage. Yes. That is his turn. Now the 2 Void Spawn go, and they're going to start chomping down. The first one is going to chop down. It's going to have 2 bites, +4, and they're going to bite Shimrin. One of them's going to hit, and that's going to do 2d6 damage. Yikes. For 11. And that brings Shimrin's HP down to 2, which is not good, especially when there are no healers. And then I think the other Void Spawn is, okay, so here's another instance. Would this second Void Spawn also try to snuff out the torch, or would they try to finish him off? This is a great Oracle question. I think it's 50-50. Will they snuff out the light? 12, that means yes. So they're going to try to use Gathering Shadows again. And that's a natural 20. The little bonus is going to get for that natural 20 is that torch is done. It can't be relit. So it's going to have to be a totally new torch that gets lit next time. So the group is plunged back into darkness. I think Ivy probably, after the light came back on, started moving towards the Void Spawn. So I think that she was able to get up into melee range during that fracas. She knows her friend is not looking good after taking that massive bite from this cute, I mean, they're cute in the drawings, but they're vicious dudes. So Ivy is using her demonic possession, which is an ability that she has to use 3 times a day. It gives her +2 to damage for 3 rounds. She's going to try to kind of flail a little bit with her greatsword and try to hit the one that damaged her friend. And of course, rolling with disadvantage, it's just in the dark. That's going to be a 3 plus some, but I'm going to cash in a luck token for that. I think it's definitely worth it. 6 with disadvantage +4 is only going to be 10, and their AC is 13. So she's going to totally miss. Layram is up next. I think Layram, they're scared. First, they're going to try to use their Omen again to get back the luck token that the group just spent. And in SoloDark, the luck tokens, it's a pool for all of the characters, which is kind of what it's like when you're playing a regular game too, since you can give someone else your luck tokens. That's going to be successful. They've used their Omen twice. They only get it 3 times a day. And then I'm going to try to have them light a torch. So last time the DC was 12, and that was with the torch that she already had in her hand. So I'm going to say if she's going to have to dig out another torch and use the flint and steel to try to light up a new one, I'm going to give it disadvantage. So 12 with disadvantage, and I think it's going to use trait check, and fails because it's a 10. So they are still in darkness. Get a luck back. So get the luck back, then spend it. and try it again. And again, it fails. That is Lyram's turn, and then Shimmering is already looking bad. But this is a fighter, and what fighters do is fight. He's going to take a wild swing at the void spawn that's near them. Again, disadvantage. 10 plus 6 is going to do it, which is great. And that's a d8 plus 2 with the bastard sword. 9. First void spawn is down 20 of its 35 hit points. The second void spawn hasn't even been touched yet. And it is the void spawn's turn. Now, with the lights out, I think they're just going to go chomp, 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 chomp. First one is going to make its first 2 attacks on Imrin, since they're right there. Plus 3, so 12 plus 3 is 15. That just barely hits. The other one misses. If this is a 1, they will stay up. Well, it's 2d6, so there's nothing they can do about it. So they're down. Shimmering is down. Put this one in upside down to remind me. Shimmering falls to the floor, and then the other one gallops up to Ivy. She's right there, kind of in the fracas, and makes 2 attack rolls. At 4, so it's a 14, and both of those are going to hit. Ooh, this is spells trouble. First attack does 5 damage, and the second attack does 4 damage. So it's 9 damage, and they are down to 3. It's going to be a tough one. Ivy cries out for help because she's not doing very well. She's still demonically possessed, and I think that her best option here is to swing and then try to run away. So she's going to swing. That's with disadvantage, and it's a 1, but I'm going to turn in the luck token. 9 plus 4 is 13, and that is what their AC is. So she gets lucky, and she's able to make contact with this void spawn that's been on top of her. Is it void spawn 1 or void spawn 2? Odds or evens. It's void spawn 1, which is lucky, although this is going to be tough for him. So it's a D12 for 12. Wow, incredible. They only have 3 HP left, and Ivy is going to run towards her friend, Layram. They kind of know the general vicinity of where one another was. Is Ivy able to make it there? I'm going to give it a dex check. I'm going to make it easy at 9, but it's going to be at disadvantage because it's dark out. And the question is if there's detritus or something on the ground that they trip over. So 9 with disadvantage, definitely. So as Ivy runs away, boom, boom, falls down, and she is lying on the ground, probably about halfway between the void spawn and Layram. Layram hears Ivy crawl out for help, hears them run, trip and fall, and man, I think the best that Layram can do. I mean, I think Layram's thinking, do I need to get the fuck out of here? They have a spear. They're going to throw it into into where they think the void spawn are. And of course, it's going to be with advantage. And they're going to subtract 1 because that's what their dex is. And I think they've got to burn a luck token here. That's cocked. That's definitely cocked. Ooh, a natural 20. Unfortunately, it's only a 9, so that's not going to hit. They are going to use the last use of the omen, which also fails. And I think this party is not looking good. So that's Lyram's turn. Shimmerin is down, so they're going to roll a D4. So there they have 4 plus 3 is their con. They actually have 7 rounds before they are totally die. I'm just going to put that little counter right there. All right, it's back to the void spawn. They're going to scamper along, and one of them is going to use their 2-bite attacks on Layram since they're laying down. There's AC 10. One of them hits. Sorry, that wasn't against Layram. That was against Ivy, who's the one that's on the ground. They only have 3 HP left, so it could very well do it. Oh my gosh, and it's a 2. So they are still up. Wow. Ivy is still up with 1 hit point. And I think the other one is going to take a bite at Layram, or 2 bites rather. And one of those hits for 8. That's exactly how much HP they have. So Layram is also down. Yikes. Back to the top of the order. And it's just Ivy. Ivy's the only person left. She has 1 hit point. This is her last round with demonic possession. And actually, she had demonic possession activated last time when she hit. So that should have been 2 more damage. So I'm going to retroactively give that here. Which means this first void spawn actually only has 1 hit point left. Here's how this could play out. Ivy's going to attack, try to hit this first void spawn. If they're successful, it's going to go down, and the second voice bond will make a morale check. I think that's the only way that this party is getting out of this, is if one, Ivy hits with, Ivy's going to have disadvantage. She needs to hit and do that damage. And then the other void spawn needs to fail the morale check. And of course, I've used up all the luck tokens, so this is pretty much it, unless the void spawns miss a bunch of attacks. 10 plus 4 is 14, which beats the AC of 13. So that void spawn is done. Well, she's able to stand up. She has a hit point. Stands up, great sword, 2 hands. She makes contact with something. She makes contact with like the darkness of the thing. And before she was slicing into it, but this time she feels contact made and the blade just sinks into the thing before it vanishes. And here's a clunk as the thing's skull just drops to the ground. That's the only really non-darkness thing, is these weird skulls they have. So then it's up to this second void spawn here. Will they make this morale check? Wisdom check 15, and they have a +2. It's a special roll, so I'm going to bring up this white die just to differentiate it. They need to roll under a 13, and it's a 6. So this guy, this little demony guy, sees his pal go down and scampers away. Wow. So they are still in darkness, but Ivy is able to crawl over to her friends. Ivy with 1 hit point left. I think that is a great place to leave this off at. So obviously this is going to be a few videos. And in the next video, we're going to pick up with Ivy being conscious in the darkness. 2 friends are down, and we'll see how it goes. If you thought this was cool, and you think this adventure sounds cool, this adventure for Dragontown in the Darkness Below, go check out JP Coovert's Kickstarter campaign that he's running for this right now. At the Kickstarter page, you can download this chapter that I'm running in Shadowdark to run if you want to. And if the campaign gets to $100,000, I'll actually be converting this entire 208-page book to Shadowdark, and all backers are going to get a digital copy of that. JP's awesome, and I would say go back his project regardless. But especially if you're a fan of Shadowdark, you're going to want to back this one to get a version of this for Shadowdark to play with your friends. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like it, and of course, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below of what you thought and how you might deal with a void spawn. So until our next adventure, stay inspired and keep those dice rolling. Thanks for watching.